The morning sun cast long shadows across the Pentagon's marble floors as General Marcus Thompson strode through the corridors with his usual commanding presence. At 58, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had climbed the military ranks through 3 decades of service, earning his stars through strategic brilliance and an unwavering belief in traditional military hierarchy. His polished shoes clicked against the floor in perfect rhythm, a sound that had become as familiar to Pentagon staff as the morning reveille. Thompson had built his reputation on maintaining order and discipline. He believed in the old ways, where respect flowed upward through the chain of command and questioning authority was tantamount to insubordination. His corner office displayed an impressive array of commendations, photographs with presidents, and artifacts from various military campaigns. To many, he represented the embodiment of military tradition and excellence. On this particular Tuesday morning, Thompson was running late for a critical briefing with the Joint Chiefs. The previous evening had stretched well past midnight as he reviewed classified intelligence reports from the Middle East. His usual morning routine of reviewing personnel files and strategic updates had been compressed into a hurried scan of documents while his aide briefed him on the day's schedule. The weight of command sat heavily on his shoulders, but he had long ago learned to carry such burdens without visible strain. The Pentagon's earring corridor was unusually crowded that morning. A combination of visiting dignitaries, new personnel orientations, and routine briefings had created an unusual bottleneck near the executive elevator bank. Thompson moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, his eyes focused ahead on his destination. He had navigated these halls thousands of times, and the familiar environment allowed his mind to wander to the upcoming briefing where he would need to present recommendations on troop deployments. As he approached the elevator, Thompson noticed the doors beginning to close. Without breaking stride, he quickened his pace, determined not to wait for the next car. Time was precious, and every minute counted when dealing with matters of national security. His focus remained fixed on reaching the elevator before it departed, his peripheral vision registering only the standard mix of military personnel and civilian contractors that populated the Pentagon's daily landscape. In his haste, Thompson failed to notice the figure standing slightly to his right, reviewing a tablet while waiting for the elevator. The person wore standard military fatigues, but, in the crowded corridor and, with his attention divided between his urgent timeline and the closing elevator doors, the general's situational awareness was momentarily compromised. His mind was already in the briefing room, mentally rehearsing key points about strategic positioning and resource allocation. The collision happened in an instant. As Thompson lunged forward to catch the elevator, his elbow connected sharply with the figure beside him. The impact was forceful enough to send the tablet clattering to the floor and caused the person to stumble backward several steps. The sound of the device hitting the marble floor echoed through the corridor, drawing the attention of nearby personnel who turned to witness the aftermath of the unexpected encounter. Thompson's immediate reaction was one of irritation rather than concern. In his worldview, military personnel should maintain proper awareness of their surroundings and anticipate the movements of senior officers. The idea that he might bear responsibility for the collision didn't immediately cross his mind. Instead, he felt a surge of annoyance at what he perceived as another example of declining standards among junior personnel. Turning toward the person he had struck, Thompson prepared to deliver a sharp reprimand about situational awareness and proper corridor protocol. His mouth was already forming the words of criticism when his eyes focused on the individual now steadying herself against the wall. What he saw caused his prepared speech to die in his throat and his confident demeanor to falter for the first time in recent memory. The woman before him stood approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall, but her presence seemed to command significantly more space. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, revealing a face that combined classical beauty with an unmistakable edge of steel. Her uniform bore the insignia of a Marine Corps captain, but it was her eyes that truly captured Thompson's attention. They held a depth that spoke of experiences far beyond her apparent years, a hardness that suggested she had seen combat and emerged stronger for it. Captain Sarah Rodriguez had earned her rank through merit in some of the most challenging environments the Marine Corps had to offer. Her service record included 3 combat deployments, numerous commendations for valor, and a reputation among her peers as someone who could be counted on when situations became desperate. She had survived firefights in Afghanistan, led rescue operations in hostile territory, and commanded respect from both subordinates and superiors through her combination of tactical brilliance and unwavering moral courage. As Thompson took in the details of her appearance, he noticed other telling signs that marked her as far from an ordinary staff officer. Her hands, though manicured to regulation standards, bore small scars that suggested familiarity with weapons and rough conditions. Her posture, even as she recovered from the unexpected impact, remained balanced and ready, the stance of someone trained to react instantly to threats. Most significantly, her expression showed no trace of the deference or intimidation that Thompson had grown accustomed to seeing in junior officers. The silence that followed the collision stretched for several seconds, each moment adding to Thompson's growing realization that he had misjudged the situation entirely. Rodriguez made no move to retrieve her fallen tablet, instead maintaining steady eye contact with the general. Her silence was not one of shock or submission, but rather the calm before a storm, the momentary pause that experienced warriors take before responding to an attack. Other personnel in the corridor had stopped their conversations and activities to observe the unfolding scene. Word traveled quickly through Pentagon corridors, and the unusual sight of a general having collided with a Marine captain was already generating whispered commentary among the gathered crowd. Some recognized Rodriguez from her reputation, while others simply sensed the tension building in the air between the two officers. Thompson found himself in unfamiliar territory. Throughout his career, he had grown accustomed to immediate acknowledgement of his authority and rapid resolution of any conflicts through the simple application of rank and position. The woman before him, however, seemed entirely unimpressed by his stars and showed no signs of backing down or offering the apology he expected. Instead, she appeared to be evaluating him with the same intensity that he was studying her. The general's military training began to reassert itself as he recognized the signs of a professional warrior. Rodriguez's bearing, despite the casual nature of their encounter, suggested someone who had faced far more serious challenges than an accidental collision in a Pentagon corridor. Her calm demeanor in the face of his obvious authority indicated either exceptional discipline or dangerous confidence in her own abilities. As the moment continued to stretch, Thompson became increasingly aware that his usual tactics would be insufficient to resolve this situation. The crowd of onlookers was growing, and his reputation for maintaining control in all circumstances was beginning to feel threatened. He had built his career on projecting strength and authority, but something about Rodriguez's unwavering gaze suggested that she saw through such displays to evaluate the substance beneath. The tablet lay forgotten on the marble floor between them, its screen dark and its significance diminished by the growing tension in the air. What had begun as a simple accident was rapidly evolving into something far more complex, a test of wills between two military professionals from very different backgrounds and with very different approaches to leadership and authority. Thompson realized with growing unease that Captain Sarah Rodriguez was not going to simply apologize and walk away. The look in her eyes suggested that she was prepared for whatever came next, and that his assumption of easy dominance in this situation had been catastrophically wrong. For the first time in years, the general found himself uncertain about how to proceed, facing an opponent who seemed utterly unintimidated by his rank, his reputation, or his carefully cultivated aura of command authority. The collision in the Pentagon corridor was about to become something much more significant than either officer had anticipated when they began their morning routines. In that moment of recognition, General Marcus Thompson understood that he had indeed picked the wrong Marine to underestimate, and the consequences of that error were only beginning to unfold. The tension in the Pentagon corridor reached a breaking point as General Thompson finally found his voice. His initial shock at encountering someone who didn't immediately defer to his authority transformed into a mixture of curiosity and professional wariness. He had commanded troops in combat zones, negotiated with foreign military leaders, and briefed presidents on matters of national security, but something about Captain Rodriguez's unwavering composure suggested this would be unlike any confrontation he had previously experienced. "Captain," Thompson began, his tone carefully measured to maintain authority while acknowledging the unusual nature of their encounter. "I trust you're uninjured from our collision." His words carried the subtle implication that the responsibility for the incident lay with her positioning rather than his hurried movement, a diplomatic way of shifting blame while appearing concerned for her welfare. Rodriguez bent slowly to retrieve her tablet, never breaking eye contact with the general. Her movements were deliberate and controlled, demonstrating the kind of tactical awareness that had kept her alive through multiple combat deployments. As she straightened, she examined the device briefly before responding in a voice that carried clearly through the now silent corridor. "No injury, sir," she replied, her tone respectful but notably lacking the deferential quality Thompson expected from junior officers. "Though I notice you seem to be in quite a hurry. Perhaps you should consider the safety of other personnel when navigating shared spaces." The words were professionally delivered, but their implication was unmistakable. She was holding him accountable for the collision rather than accepting responsibility herself. The audacity of her response sent a ripple of shock through the gathered crowd. Pentagon personnel rarely witnessed junior officers challenging general officers so directly, regardless of the circumstances. Whispered conversations ceased entirely as everyone present recognized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Thompson felt his face flush slightly as he processed the fact that he had just been publicly corrected by a captain in front of dozens of witnesses. Thompson's military training warred with his personal pride as he considered his response. His initial instinct was to assert his authority decisively, to remind this presumptuous captain of the proper way to address a superior officer. However, something in Rodriguez's bearing suggested that escalating the confrontation might not produce the quick resolution he preferred. Her calm confidence indicated someone who was prepared for whatever consequences might follow her bold statement. "Captain Rodriguez," Thompson said, reading her name tape while his mind raced to place her within the complex hierarchy of Pentagon assignments. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced. Your candor is refreshing, though perhaps not entirely appropriate given the circumstances." He paused, studying her face for any sign of backing down. "Might I inquire about your current assignment here?" Rodriguez smiled slightly, an expression that somehow managed to be both respectful and subtly challenging. "I'm assigned to the Joint Special Operations Command Liaison Office, sir. My role involves coordinating between various special operations units and conventional forces for integrated mission planning." She paused, allowing the significance of her position to register. "I'm here today to brief senior leadership on recent developments in asymmetric warfare tactics." The revelation hit Thompson like a physical blow. JSOC liaison officers were typically among the most experienced and capable personnel in the military, individuals who had proven themselves in the most demanding operational environments. They were not staff officers pushing papers but combat veterans whose insights into modern warfare were considered invaluable by the highest levels of military command. The realization that he had dismissed such an officer so casually began to reshape his understanding of the situation. Furthermore, Thompson recognized that Rodriguez would have clearances and access to information that few personnel possessed. Her briefing to senior leadership meant she would likely be in the same meetings he attended, making their professional relationship potentially significant for both their careers. The corridor collision was no longer an isolated incident but the beginning of what could be an extended professional interaction. "I see," Thompson replied, his tone shifting slightly as he processed this new information. "And what specific areas of expertise do you bring to that role, Captain?" The question served multiple purposes. It demonstrated professional interest, bought him time to reassess the situation, and allowed him to gauge the depth of her qualifications. Rodriguez's response revealed the breadth of her experience in a way that was both impressive and subtly intimidating. "My background includes 3 combat deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq, specializing in counterinsurgency operations and intelligence gathering. I've led joint operations involving Marine, Army, Navy, and Air Force personnel, as well as coordinated with CIA and Special Operations Command elements. My current focus is on developing tactics to counter hybrid warfare threats that combine conventional and irregular elements." Each element of her background served to underscore just how significantly Thompson had misjudged her. Rodriguez was not merely a junior officer to be dismissed but a subject matter expert whose opinions carried weight in the highest circles of military planning. Her combat experience exceeded that of many senior officers, and her specialized knowledge made her voice valuable in strategic discussions. The general found himself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. His reputation within the Pentagon was built on his ability to read situations and people accurately, but his initial assessment of Rodriguez had been spectacularly wrong. Worse, his dismissive attitude had been witnessed by numerous personnel who would undoubtedly spread word of the encounter throughout the building's extensive network of professional relationships. Impressive credentials, Captain, Thompson acknowledged, his earlier irritation replaced by grudging respect. I imagine your insights into current tactical developments are quite valuable to the planning process. The admission represented a significant shift in his approach, acknowledging her professional competence rather than focusing solely on rank structure. Rodriguez nodded slightly, accepting the recognition without visible satisfaction. I believe in contributing whatever expertise I can to ensure our forces have every advantage possible. Combat experience has a way of clarifying what works and what doesn't in ways that theoretical planning sometimes misses. Her statement carried an implicit criticism of staff officers who made decisions without first-hand knowledge of battlefield realities. The crowd around them had grown larger as word of the unusual confrontation spread through the immediate area. Pentagon personnel were accustomed to routine interactions between officers of different ranks, but the sight of a captain holding her ground against a general while discussing substantive military matters was sufficiently unusual to draw considerable attention. Thompson became increasingly aware that their conversation was being closely monitored by dozens of witnesses. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more appropriate setting, Thompson suggested, glancing meaningfully at the gathered crowd. I'd be interested in hearing more about your assessment of current tactical trends. The invitation served to gracefully extract them both from the public spotlight while maintaining his authority and demonstrating interest in her professional capabilities. Rodriguez considered the offer for a moment before nodding. I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss these matters with someone of your experience, sir. However, I should mention that I'm expected at the JSOC briefing in 15 minutes. Perhaps we could schedule something for later today? Her response was tactful but firm, establishing that she had her own professional obligations that took precedence over his invitation. Thompson found himself oddly impressed by her ability to balance respect with independence. Most junior officers would have immediately rearranged their schedules to accommodate a general's request, but Rodriguez treated it as a professional courtesy rather than a command. Her confidence in her own value to the organization was evident in her willingness to suggest alternative timing rather than automatically deferring to his preferences. Of course, Thompson replied, recognizing that pushing the matter would only highlight his earlier misjudgment. My aide can coordinate with your office to find a mutually convenient time. He paused, studying her face once more. I suspect our conversation will be quite enlightening for both of us. As they prepared to part ways, Thompson reflected on how dramatically his perception of the morning's events had changed. What had begun as a minor irritation with a careless junior officer had evolved into an encounter with a highly qualified professional whose expertise might prove valuable to his own understanding of modern military challenges. The collision in the corridor had revealed far more about his own assumptions and limitations than about any deficiency in Pentagon personnel standards. Rodriguez gathered her belongings and prepared to leave for her briefing, but not before offering a final observation. General, if I may suggest something based on our conversation today? She waited for his nod before continuing. The Pentagon can be a challenging environment to navigate, both physically and professionally. Perhaps we could all benefit from being more aware of our surroundings and the people around us. The statement carried multiple layers of meaning that Thompson found himself unpacking long after Rodriguez had disappeared around the corner toward the briefing rooms. On its surface, it addressed the practical matter of corridor safety, but deeper implications touched on situational awareness, respect for personnel at all levels, and the danger of making assumptions based solely on rank or appearance. Standing alone in the now dispersing crowd, General Marcus Thompson realized that his brief encounter with Captain Sarah Rodriguez had challenged fundamental assumptions about leadership, authority, and professional relationships that had guided his career for 3 decades. The woman had managed to educate him about his own limitations while maintaining perfect military courtesy, a combination of skills that spoke to exceptional professional competence and personal confidence. The tablet incident would become the starting point for a professional relationship that would reshape both officers' understanding of effective leadership and the evolving nature of modern military service. Thompson's recognition that he had picked the wrong Marine was only the beginning of discoveries that would influence his approach to command for the remainder of his career. 3 days after their corridor encounter, General Thompson found himself seated in a secure briefing room deep within the Pentagon's most restricted areas. The morning's intelligence briefing had been routine until Captain Rodriguez entered the room carrying a classified folder marked with the highest security designations. Her presence transformed the atmosphere immediately, as several senior officers straightened in their chairs and focused their attention on the materials she was preparing to present. Thompson watched with growing interest as Rodriguez set up her presentation materials with the efficient precision of someone accustomed to briefing high-level audiences on critical matters. Her movements were economical and purposeful, suggesting extensive experience in situations where every minute counted and mistakes could have serious consequences. The confidence she displayed in preparing to address a room full of general officers reinforced his growing understanding of just how significantly he had misjudged her during their first meeting. The briefing Rodriguez delivered over the following 45 minutes completely reshaped Thompson's understanding of current military challenges and the evolving nature of modern warfare. Her analysis of hybrid threats combined theoretical knowledge with practical insights gained from direct combat experience in ways that made abstract concepts immediately relevant to strategic planning. She spoke with the authority of someone who had personally witnessed the tactics she described and understood their implications for American military operations worldwide. Her presentation included detailed analysis of recent engagements where conventional forces had encountered unconventional tactics, highlighting gaps in current training and equipment that could prove costly in future conflicts. Rodriguez's recommendations for addressing these challenges demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both tactical realities and strategic implications, connecting battlefield observations to policy decisions in ways that impressed even the most senior officers present. What struck Thompson most forcefully was Rodriguez's ability to challenge conventional wisdom without appearing disrespectful or insubordinate. She questioned established tactical doctrines when her experience suggested they were inadequate for current threats, but did so in ways that invited discussion rather than defensiveness. Her approach to intellectual discourse demonstrated the same confidence and competence that had characterized their corridor encounter, but now Thompson could appreciate its professional value rather than feeling threatened by it. During the question-and-answer session that followed her formal presentation, Rodriguez demonstrated remarkable depth of knowledge across multiple domains of military science. She fielded queries about logistics, intelligence gathering, international law, and force structure with equal facility, drawing on experiences that ranged from small unit tactics to strategic coordination with allied forces. Her responses revealed someone who understood warfare as both an art and a science, combining analytical rigor with intuitive grasp of human factors that determine success or failure in combat situations. Following the briefing, Thompson approached Rodriguez as other officers filed out of the secure conference room. His intention was to acknowledge the quality of her presentation and, perhaps, arrange the professional discussion they had mentioned during their first meeting. However, their conversation quickly evolved beyond simple courtesy into a substantive exchange about military leadership and the challenges facing modern armed forces. "Captain, that was an exceptional briefing," Thompson began, his tone conveying genuine admiration rather than obligatory politeness. "Your insights into the evolution of asymmetric threats were particularly valuable. I suspect many of us will need to reconsider some of our assumptions about future operational requirements." The admission represented a significant departure from his usual reluctance to acknowledge guidance from junior officers. Rodriguez accepted the compliment gracefully while maintaining her characteristic directness. "Thank you, sir. I believe one of our greatest challenges is ensuring that lessons learned at the tactical level influence strategic planning. Too often, there's a disconnect between what troops experience in the field and what gets incorporated into institutional doctrine." Her observation touched on persistent problems in military organization that had frustrated many combat veterans. Their discussion continued as they walked through the Pentagon's corridors, covering topics that ranged from personnel development to technological innovation in military applications. Thompson found himself genuinely engaged in intellectual discourse with Rodriguez, discovering perspectives that challenged his established views while offering practical alternatives based on demonstrated effectiveness rather than theoretical preferences. Rodriguez's approach to professional conversation proved as distinctive as her tactical expertise. She listened carefully to Thompson's observations and questions, clearly considering his points before responding with insights that built upon rather than dismissed his contributions. Her ability to engage in substantive debate while maintaining appropriate military courtesy demonstrated sophisticated interpersonal skills that complemented her technical competence. As their discussion progressed, Thompson began to understand how Rodriguez had developed such exceptional professional capabilities at a relatively junior rank. Her experiences in combat zones had provided education in leadership and decision-making that many senior officers never received, forcing her to develop skills through necessity that others acquired slowly through traditional career progression. Her direct exposure to the consequences of military decisions had created perspective that informed all her professional activities. The conversation also revealed Rodriguez's broader understanding of military service as both personal calling and institutional responsibility. She spoke eloquently about the obligation to constantly improve capability and effectiveness, viewing professional development not as career advancement but as preparation to better serve the personnel under her command and the missions they would be asked to execute. Her commitment to excellence appeared driven by recognition that lives depended on the quality of military leadership at every level. Thompson found himself sharing perspectives about senior leadership challenges that he rarely discussed with subordinates, drawn out by Rodriguez's obvious competence and genuine interest in understanding complex organizational dynamics. Her questions about strategic decision-making demonstrated sophisticated appreciation for the factors that influenced high-level planning, while her observations about implementation challenges reflected practical experience with translating policy into action. Their professional exchange was interrupted by Thompson's aide, who approached with visible reluctance to disturb what appeared to be an important discussion between senior leadership. The aide carried a folder marked with urgent classification indicators, suggesting that immediate attention was required for developing situations that could not wait for normal scheduling procedures. "General, I apologize for the interruption," the aide said, glancing nervously between Thompson and Rodriguez. "The Secretary's office has requested your immediate presence for an emergency briefing regarding developing situations in the Middle East. Captain Rodriguez, you're also requested to attend based on your recent regional analysis work." The summons represented exactly the kind of crisis situation that revealed the true value of military professionals. Thompson recognized that Rodriguez's inclusion in emergency briefings indicated that senior leadership valued her expertise sufficiently to seek her input on critical decisions. Her regional knowledge and analytical capabilities had apparently made her indispensable for understanding rapidly evolving situations that required immediate response. As they made their way to the emergency briefing, Thompson reflected on how dramatically his assessment of Rodriguez had evolved over the past few days. What had begun with a corridor collision had developed into professional respect that was based on demonstrated competence rather than rank or position. Her ability to contribute meaningfully to the most sensitive military planning discussions marked her as someone whose career would likely advance rapidly through increasing levels of responsibility. The emergency briefing revealed intelligence about potential terrorist activities that threatened American interests in multiple countries simultaneously. The complexity of the situation required coordination between various military branches, intelligence agencies, and allied forces, exactly the kind of challenge that demanded Rodriguez's expertise in joint operations and asymmetric threats. Her participation in developing response options demonstrated her value to senior leadership in ways that routine assignments never could. Throughout the crisis briefing, Rodriguez's contributions proved instrumental in understanding the tactical implications of various response scenarios. Her ability to anticipate likely enemy reactions to different courses of action helped senior leaders evaluate options more accurately, while her knowledge of local conditions informed decisions about force deployment and operational timelines. Thompson watched her performance with growing appreciation for capabilities that far exceeded what her rank would normally suggest. The briefing concluded with assignments for developing detailed operational plans based on the preliminary analysis conducted during the emergency session. Rodriguez received responsibility for coordinating intelligence requirements with special operations elements, a task that would require her to work directly with the most elite military units in planning response scenarios. Her selection for such critical responsibilities confirmed her status as a rising star within the special operations community. As they left the briefing room, Thompson realized that his initial collision with Rodriguez had introduced him to someone who would likely play increasingly important roles in military operations for years to come. Her combination of combat experience, analytical capability, and leadership skills positioned her for advancement through the ranks at a pace that would make her a significant figure in military planning. His early dismissal of her potential now seemed not just wrong but potentially costly to his own understanding of emerging military talent. The afternoon's events had transformed their professional relationship from awkward first meeting to mutual respect based on demonstrated competence. Thompson's recognition that he had initially misjudged Rodriguez now extended to appreciation for her exceptional qualifications and potential for future contribution to military effectiveness. Their chance encounter was evolving into exactly the kind of professional relationship that enhanced capability for both officers involved. 6 months after their initial encounter, General Thompson received notification that would fundamentally alter his understanding of military excellence and leadership potential. The message arrived through secure channels during a routine morning briefing, but its contents were anything but ordinary. Captain Sarah Rodriguez had been selected for accelerated promotion to major and assignment as the lead planning officer for a joint task force addressing emerging threats in the Pacific Theater. The promotion represented recognition that Rodriguez's capabilities exceeded normal expectations for her rank and experience level. Her selection for the Pacific assignment indicated that senior military leadership viewed her expertise as essential for addressing complex strategic challenges that required innovative thinking and exceptional execution. Thompson read the notification with mixed feelings of pride in having recognized her potential and regret that his initial assessment had been so dramatically wrong. The Joint Task Force assignment would place Rodriguez in a position of unprecedented responsibility for someone of her rank, coordinating planning efforts between multiple military branches, intelligence agencies, and allied forces across the Pacific region. Her role would involve developing response scenarios for various contingencies while maintaining operational security and ensuring that all participating elements could execute their assigned responsibilities effectively. The complexity of such coordination typically required years of additional experience, making her selection a remarkable demonstration of confidence in her abilities. Thompson's own involvement in Pacific theater planning meant that he would work closely with Rodriguez in her new capacity, creating opportunities for extended professional collaboration that would test both their capabilities in demanding operational environments. Their working relationship had evolved considerably since the corridor collision, but the new assignment would require them to function as partners in addressing challenges that could affect American security interests across the globe's largest ocean. The first major test of their partnership came during a crisis simulation exercise designed to evaluate response capabilities for multiple simultaneous threats across different geographic regions. Rodriguez's responsibility for coordinating Pacific theater responses required her to work with Thompson's strategic planning team in developing scenarios that could rapidly adapt to changing conditions while maintaining strategic coherence across all operational areas. During the simulation, Rodriguez demonstrated tactical innovation that impressed even the most experienced participants. Her approach to problem-solving combined traditional military planning with unconventional thinking that produced solutions others had not considered. When conventional responses proved inadequate for simulated threats, she developed alternative strategies that leveraged unique capabilities of different military branches in ways that maximized effectiveness while minimizing resource requirements. Thompson observed Rodriguez's performance during the simulation with growing admiration for her ability to maintain strategic perspective while addressing tactical details. Her coordination of multiple operational elements required constant communication with diverse personnel across different services, each with their own procedures and priorities. Her success in achieving unified action from such varied elements demonstrated leadership skills that many senior officers never fully developed. The simulation also revealed Rodriguez's exceptional ability to function under extreme pressure while maintaining clarity of thought and communication. As scenarios became more complex and time constraints intensified, she continued to provide clear guidance and coordinated responses that kept all elements functioning effectively toward common objectives. Her performance under stress indicated readiness for real-world responsibilities that would be far more demanding than any training exercise. Following the simulation, Thompson sought private discussion with Rodriguez to explore her perspective on the challenges they had addressed together. Their conversation took place in his office, surrounded by the artifacts of his long military career, but focused entirely on future challenges rather than past achievements. Rodriguez's insights into modern military requirements provided Thompson with perspective that influenced his understanding of leadership development and operational planning. Major Rodriguez, Thompson began, using her new rank with obvious satisfaction. Your performance during the simulation was exceptional. Your ability to coordinate diverse elements while maintaining strategic focus suggests readiness for even greater responsibilities. He paused, studying her reaction to the praise. I'm curious about your assessment of the challenges we encountered and how they might inform our approach to real-world operations. Rodriguez responded with characteristic directness and analytical depth. Thank you, sir. I believe the simulation highlighted the importance of maintaining flexibility in our planning while ensuring that all participants understand both their specific roles and the broader objectives we're trying to achieve. She leaned forward slightly, her intensity evident. One thing that struck me was how quickly conventional approaches became inadequate when faced with adaptive opposition. Our ability to innovate under pressure may be our greatest strategic advantage. Their discussion continued for over an hour, covering topics that ranged from personnel development to technological innovation in military applications. Thompson found himself learning from Rodriguez's perspective on leadership challenges that he had approached differently throughout his career. Her insights into motivating diverse personnel and maintaining mission focus under stress provided him with new approaches to his own command responsibilities. The conversation also explored broader questions about the future of military service and the qualities that would be required for success in increasingly complex operational environments. Rodriguez's experiences in joint operations had given her unique perspective on the challenges of integrating different military cultures and capabilities, insights that proved valuable for understanding institutional development needs. As their professional relationship deepened, Thompson began to recognize Rodriguez as a potential successor for many of his current responsibilities. Her combination of tactical expertise, strategic thinking, and leadership capability positioned her for advancement through senior ranks at a pace that would make her a significant figure in military planning for decades to come. Her potential for contribution to national security seemed virtually unlimited, given continued development and appropriate assignments. The relationship that had begun with a collision in a Pentagon corridor had evolved into mutual professional respect based on demonstrated excellence under demanding conditions. Thompson's initial misjudgment of Rodriguez had taught him valuable lessons about the danger of making assumptions based on rank or appearance rather than evaluating actual capability and character. Her performance had consistently exceeded his evolving expectations, forcing him to reconsider fundamental beliefs about leadership and military effectiveness. During subsequent months, Thompson and Rodriguez collaborated on multiple projects that addressed emerging security challenges across various geographic regions. Their partnership proved highly effective, combining Thompson's strategic experience with Rodriguez's tactical innovation and operational expertise. Together, they developed planning approaches that influenced military doctrine and training programs throughout the armed services. Rodriguez's continued advancement through increasing levels of responsibility validated Thompson's revised assessment of her potential. Her assignments to critical positions within joint command structures confirmed that senior leadership recognized her exceptional qualifications and trusted her with responsibilities that could affect American security interests worldwide. Her career trajectory suggested eventual advancement to the highest levels of military command. The professional relationship between Thompson and Rodriguez became a model for effective collaboration between officers of different ranks and backgrounds. Their ability to combine respect for military hierarchy with open exchange of ideas demonstrated how traditional command structures could adapt to incorporate diverse perspectives and innovative thinking. Their partnership influenced other senior leaders to reconsider approaches to professional development and talent recognition. Years later, as Thompson prepared for retirement after a distinguished career, he reflected on the lessons learned from his encounter with Rodriguez. The collision that had initially irritated him had introduced him to someone who changed his understanding of leadership excellence and military potential. His recognition that he had picked the wrong Marine to dismiss had led to professional growth that enhanced his effectiveness throughout his final years of service. Rodriguez's subsequent advancement to senior leadership positions within Special Operations Command validated all of Thompson's revised assessments of her capabilities. Her influence on military planning and operational effectiveness extended far beyond their initial collaboration, affecting how the armed services approached emerging challenges and developed future leaders. The corridor encounter that had seemed so insignificant at the time had connected two careers in ways that strengthened both officers and contributed to overall military effectiveness. The story of their professional relationship became an example within military education programs of how assumptions based on rank or first impressions could prevent recognition of exceptional talent. Thompson's willingness to revise his initial assessment and learn from Rodriguez's expertise demonstrated the kind of intellectual humility that characterized truly effective leaders. Their partnership proved that excellent results required combining experience with innovation, tradition with adaptation, and hierarchy with respect for individual merit regardless of rank or position.